The opening ceremony was broadcast in over 400 languages, countless dialects, and at least 6 forms of non-verbal photonic modulation. Earth's first Interstellar Olympic Games had officially begun. Xander Sloan stood beneath the blistering sun of the newly constructed Unity Stadium in Nevada, squinting up at the banners that fluttered in the dry wind. The smell of ozone and grilled meat filled the air. He adjusted the lanyard around his neck, the plastic badge swinging against his chest. It read, "Xander Sloan Athletic Safety Coordinator. I swear," he muttered, "if another alien tries to pole vault without understanding gravity, I'm gonna lose it." A metallic whir interrupted his thoughts. A long, spindly creature hovered beside him on 4 segmented legs, its translucent hide pulsing with cyan hues. "Coordinator Sloan," it said in a voice that resembled a flute being played underwater. "I am Valoon of Yekta. I will represent my people in the javelin throw. I have reviewed your instructional holos. I am confident." Xander gave it a sideways look. "Did you actually watch the full safety course or just the highlight reel?" "I watched the throwing. It was exhilarating." "Did you watch the part where it says not to run with the javelin pointed forward?" "I absorbed the excitement." "Right," Xander sighed. "Just don't impale anyone." Valoon nodded or did the equivalent of a nod and scuttled off toward the field. Over the PA system, a cheerful voice chirped, "Next up, women's hurdles, featuring competitors from Earth, Catharn, and the Gleason Tri-Alliance." Xander scanned the arena. The Catharn athlete was already stretching, if you could call the elastic, gelatinous undulations stretching. Beside her, the Gleason competitor, something resembling a walking coral reef, was clicking its limbs together in what he assumed was a warm-up ritual. Then came the humans, jogging in place, focused and visibly tense. A gunshot cracked. The runners launched forward. The Catharn slid under the first hurdle like a wave, the Gleason launched over it with a single springy bounce, and the humans, well, they hurdled. That was their thing. Then came the 4th hurdle. The Gleason caught a foot, if that's what it was, and went tumbling. Sharp coral limbs scattered like shrapnel. The Catharn, distracted, shifted mid-slide and slammed into a side barrier with a wet splat. One human hurdler, a tall woman in blue, barely cleared the debris and landed wrong ankle twisting, leg folding unnaturally before she crumpled to the track. Xander was already sprinting down the corridor before the crowd's gasp had even finished. By the time he reached the field, medics were surrounding the injured. The human woman was clutching her leg, face contorted in pain. "It snapped," she groaned. "I heard it snap." "Hold still," Xander said, crouching beside her. "I'm Xander. What's your name?" "Alessa," she whispered. "Alessa Janes." "All right, Alessa, help's here. We'll get you stabilized." The Gleason was upright again, limbs twitching erratically. A translator unit buzzed beside its head. "I did not know your bones were so fragile," it said, voice flat. Xander stared at it. "We sent you the full emergency briefing. There's a whole section on human anatomy." "Yes, but I assumed your bones were reinforced for athletic combat." "It's not combat, it's track and field." The Gleason looked at Alessa, then back at Xander. "This is a design flaw." Before Xander could argue, a loud, automated voice echoed across the stadium. "Attention, competitors in the hammer throw, please report to Sector C. Repeat, hammer throw to Sector C." Xander stood, brushing off his knees. "If anyone gets hit with a hammer, I'm quitting." 2 hours later, he was regretting every decision that had led him here. Sector C looked like a scrapyard. The hammer throwers weren't using traditional hammers. The Yekta had brought a pulsating sphere of compressed gravitons, and the Drenari competitor insisted on using a fused alloy boulder attached to a plasma tether. Xander approached the Drenari, a broad-shouldered purple thing with arms like tree trunks. "Look, I know this is your culture's version of a hammer, but it's literally melting the turf." "It is ceremonial, and it's a fire hazard." The Drenari glared. "Weak bones." "Weak rules. Tell that to the insurance committee." Meanwhile, the human competitor, a burly man named Carlos, was rolling his shoulders and eyeing the alien hammers with suspicion. "You sure I'm allowed to be out here with all that?" he asked. Xander patted him on the back. "You're the only one whose hammer won't cause a crater. You're also the only one who's read the rulebook, Carlos grunted. Guess that's my superpower. The event began and miraculously no one died. But the moment the Drenari's hammer left his hand, it tore a chunk of synthetic turf and embedded itself into the shock-absorbent wall, sending up sparks. The crowd cheered. Xander didn't. After the dust settled, Xander made his way back toward the medical tent. Alessa was there, leg in a brace, propped up on a cot with a tablet in her hands. "How's it looking?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "Fracture confirmed," she said. "Fibula, clean break. 4 to 6 weeks minimum." "Damn, you were leading too," she shrugged. "It's okay, I'll still be here." Watching the chaos. A shriek cut through the air. Xander stood so fast he knocked over the chair. The long jump pit had just seen its first catastrophic misunderstanding. The Delvani athlete, built like a flexible centipede, had hurled itself into the sand at a speed that shattered 2 of its own legs and cracked the reinforced pit wall. It lay twitching, groaning in a high-frequency wail. A medic team rushed forward. Someone shouted for a translator. Xander rubbed his temples. "We forgot, didn't we?" Alessa looked up. "Forgot what? We never explained that injuries are normal, that humans actually get hurt. That our sports aren't designed for creatures with exoskeletal shock absorption or internal regeneration. You didn't think to mention that. I assumed the medical briefings would cover it." Alessa laughed, then winced. "You forgot to warn the aliens that people break bones here." Xander didn't answer. The groaning from the pit was getting louder. Later that night, he sat in the operations tent with a half-eaten protein bar and a stack of incident reports. Across from him, a liaison from the Interstellar Council, a pale yellow creature named Ivarn, stared at him with unblinking eyes. "We are concerned," Ivarn said. "Many of our athletes did not anticipate the biological consequences of your events. It's not like we planned for them to get hurt," Xander said. "We run these events every 4 years. Humans get injured, we have systems, we recover. Your resilience was not clearly communicated. Nor the absence of regenerative features." Xander leaned back. "You're saying we should have told everyone that human bones don't grow back overnight." "Yes." Noted, Ivarn tapped a long finger on the table. "There is also confusion. Your athletes continue despite injury. They do not yield. This is seen as alarming." Xander nodded slowly. "That's just how we do it." "But why?" he thought for a moment. "Because we don't like losing. Because we train for years and don't want it to go to waste. Because we're stubborn. Take your pick." Ivarn blinked again. "We will add this to the next briefing." The next day, the wrestling matches began. Xander showed up early. He found the arena 3 locker room in disarray. A Threxan competitor was pacing, muttering to himself. The human wrestler, a short but broad man named Devon, was taping up his shoulder. "Everything all right?" Xander asked. Devon glanced up. "He's freaked out." The Threxan stopped and pointed dramatically. "Your kind dislocates joints during ritual combat, not ritual sport," Xander corrected. "And yes, sometimes that happens. But usually not on purpose." The Threxan's eyes darted toward Devon. "How many bones have you broken?" Devon held up 2 fingers. The Threxan made a noise that resembled a balloon deflating. "I forfeit." And just like that, the match was cancelled. Xander didn't even bother asking why. He walked back outside and sat on a bench, watching the setting sun bleed across the desert horizon. The Olympics had become something else. A lesson, maybe. A warning, or a mirror. Alessa hobbled over on crutches, balancing a frozen bottle of water on her knee brace. "You look like you aged 10 years in 2 days, she said. "Feels more like 20. You think they'll shut it down?" "No, but next time we'll need a few more pages in the handbook," she nodded. "Maybe a whole section just called Yes, Humans Bleed," Xander chuckled. "And no, it's not a design flaw." Behind them, the stadium lights flickered to life, and the games continued. The humidity inside the aquatic training dome was oppressive, like someone had forgotten to turn off the planet's steam setting. Chlorine stung the air, mixing poorly with the faint ammonia sent trailing from the Zarnik competitors, who'd apparently misunderstood pool hygiene and excreted a protective slime before every swim. A filtration system wheezed in protest somewhere under the decking. Xander stood near the edge of Lane 8, arms crossed, trying not to breathe through his nose. The alien in the water blinked at him at least. He thought it was blinking. Hard to tell when your eyes were on stalks and moved independently. "You're telling me you've never swum in a straight line before?" he asked. The creature emitted a low series of clicks. Its translator, slung around a neck fold, lit up with a lagging delay. "Our aquatic contests involve spirals and vortex navigation. Linear propulsion is." Culturally discouraged. A human coach standing nearby let out a thin groan. "She's got a 10-meter drift. Every time she kicks off the wall, she ends up in another lane." Xander crouched and pointed at the lane markers. "You see these? They exist so you don't collide with someone else. You've got to stay between them." "I see the visual markers. I do not understand their function. You wish for enforced aquatic confinement." "No, we want to avoid cracked skulls." The alien's head stalks tilted. "Your skulls are vulnerable mid-swim," Coach Doyle threw up his hands. "You know what? I give up. I'm going to go check if the aqualums finished their warm-ups." Xander watched him go. "Look," he said, turning back to the swimmer, "just try one length without veering. Don't fight the water. Let it carry you." The alien hummed thoughtfully. "I will attempt to emulate your inefficient hydrodynamics." "Appreciated." She pushed off the wall, limbs flailing like a startled squid, and immediately drifted across the lane divider into the path of a Norwegian backstroker. There was a splash, a yelp, and then a tangle of limbs and tentacles. "Medic!" someone shouted. By the time Xander made it to the far side of the pool, the human swimmer was sitting on the edge, cradling his shoulder. A trainer knelt beside him, palpating the joint. "Dislocated," she said. "Third one today." The alien swimmer floated nearby, emitting low warbles of apology. Her translator buzzed. "In my defense, I was attempting maximum glide ratio." The swimmer groaned. "What does that even mean?" "It means we're holding the next heat until we figure out a way to keep the lanes separated with something sturdier than plastic rope," said Xander. "Steel cables, maybe. Or reinforced glass." Few minutes later, he was drying his hands on his shirt and walking briskly through the back corridor of the dome, passing a vendor cart selling pre-gelatinized energy cubes. A Kalari athlete stopped him, holding up a cube shaped like a translucent blue lung. "Is this food?" she asked. "If it's from that cart, probably." "Does it contain electrolytes or emotional stabilizers?" "I think it's mango-flavored." She sniffed it, then tucked it under her neck flap and walked off humming. He reached the med bay just as the shoulder case was being logged. The swimmer, now in a sling, looked more annoyed than hurt. "You'll pop it back in before finals?" Xander asked. "If I can tie my hair up again by then, yeah." The trainer rolled her eyes. "You'll be lucky to brush your teeth tomorrow." A soft chime signaled a new arrival. A medic entered, helping a small, furry alien onto one of the diagnostic tables. Its left foot was twisted at an unnatural angle and it whimpered in short, rhythmic bursts. "What happened?" Xander asked. "Triple jump warm up," the medic replied. "Landed wrong, no cushioning in the lower limbs." "Looks like a fracture." The alien blinked up at Xander, fur matted with sweat. "Why does your gravity remain constant?" "Because we're not a gas giant." "I would like to petition for variable gravitational calibration per event. You and half the delegations." The furball moaned. "I was told Earth sports were structured. This is chaos disguised as tradition." "Welcome to the Olympics." Later that afternoon, the sun dipped behind a bank of dust clouds, casting a dull amber glow over the open field events. Xander was perched atop a folding chair near the discus zone, clipboard balanced on his knee. His headset crackled. Throwing range check. Wind sensors at 3 meters per second. All clear. A human judge gave a thumbs up. From the ready area, a thick-limbed Torkin stepped forward, discus in hand if you could call the appendage a hand, more like a muscular clamp. The creature's translator had been calibrated to its chest, flashing with every vocal burst. "I am ready to demonstrate orbital technique." Xander leaned forward. "You remember the throwing boundary, right?" "Yes." "I have calculated the arc to remain within the designated containment vectors." "Containment vectors. I mean lines." The Torkin wound up, spinning with surprising grace for something that looked like an ambulatory tree stump. The discus flew with a high whine, slicing through the air and embedding itself into the scoreboard on the far end of the field. The scoreboard flickered, then died. Everyone stared. "I calculate that as a record," the Torkin said. Xander stood. "You hit the electronics hub. That's going to take hours to fix. Then it is a very durable throw." "That's not how this works." The Torkin paused. "Would it help if I pretended I hit the grass, only if it grows back fast?" A technician jogged out with a toolkit, muttering about fried circuits. Xander made a note on his clipboard. Recommend reinforced backboard, or possibly a bunker. By early evening, the first gymnastics qualifiers were underway in the indoor arena. The crowd was louder here, humans and aliens alike buzzing with anticipation. A delegation of insectoids clung to the ceiling rafters, clicking in applause. Xander stood behind the curtain near the vault runway, watching a small human gymnast chalk her hands. The floor crew had just finished adjusting the apparatus for the next competitor in Azari, known for their elastic spinal structures and unpredictable launch patterns. Behind him, a monitor displayed a slow-motion replay from the parallel bars. A reptilian athlete had just over-rotated during a dismount and clipped the edge of the mat, rolling to a stop with a dazed expression and one dislocated toe. Xander flicked the screen off. The Azari took their mark. A judge nodded. The alien sprinted forward, launched, twisted mid-air at an impossible angle and landed upside down, perfectly balanced on their head. The crowd erupted. Xander walked over. "That wasn't a vault. That was an escape maneuver." The Azari blinked. "But I landed. You're not supposed to use your skull as a landing pad. It is reinforced." "Well, ours aren't. You're setting unrealistic expectations." The gymnast behind them coughed politely. "Do I go now?" Xander stepped aside. "Yeah, just try not to land on your face," she smiled. No promises. By the time the moon rose, the emergency tent had acquired 3 new patients: a sprained wrist from rhythmic gymnastics, a bruised thorax from the wrestling warm-up area, and a catharn with visual disorientation after misjudging a trampoline bounce. Xander sat outside on a folding crate, sipping what might have been coffee. Alessa limped over, crutches clicking. "How's the aquatic dome?" she asked. "Smells like someone boiled algae in a locker room." "I heard the discus broke the scoreboard." "Not just broke. Vaporized the number 6. She eased down beside him. "I caught part of the gymnastics. One guy landed a triple twist, one-footed backflip, and then immediately vomited. Dizziness? Centrifugal confusion, apparently. Said Earth's rotational velocity wasn't accounted for in his internal compass." Xander stared at the stars. "I don't know if we're hosting a sports event or a galactic hazing ritual." Alessa leaned back. "You think they'll come back in 4 years? If they do, it'll be with helmets, padding, and legal waivers thicker than the rulebook." "I hope so. I'd hate to be the last human to ever compete because someone disintegrated the judges' panel." They sat in silence for a while, the desert wind rustling the edges of the tent flaps. Somewhere in the dark, applause flared again. A cheer rose in 30 different languages. "I'll say this," Xander muttered. "They might not get the rules, but they sure love the chaos." A full Earth week had passed since the Interstellar Olympic Games began, and the novelty had worn off like a cheap sticker on a wet towel. The medical tent, which had started as a precautionary installation, now resembled a triage ward. Cots lined both sides, occupied by athletes with injuries ranging from bruised cartilage clusters to actual broken neck segments, though the neck cases were mostly alien and, disturbingly, recoverable with the right enzyme bath. Xander Sloan walked the central aisle of the tent, clipboard in hand, expression grim. His shirt clung to him from hours of running field to field, and his left sock had been soaked through since a minor coolant leak in the Velcorin fencing dome that morning. He didn't want to talk about it. A human nurse was wrapping gauze around a 4-armed competitor from the Telnari system, whose mid-limb had become dislocated mid-juggle during the synchronized object manipulation finals. The Telnari had insisted on using flaming orbs. No one had stopped them. "Did the translator glitch again?" Xander asked, nodding toward the patient. "No," the nurse replied, cinching the gauze. He just didn't know his own tendons had limits. The Telnari winced, then chirped softly. He says he's still confident for the finals, the nurse translated. Xander blinked. He can't rotate his third limb. Confidence doesn't require movement. Further down the tent, Alessa Janes had commandeered a corner cot. Her leg cast was now covered in alien glyphs, most of which seemed to be polite variations of "do not reproduce this injury." She was watching a small portable screen showing the high-stakes climbing relay underway outside the stadium, where a Meraki competitor had just become wedged between two vertical panels, upside down. "Bet you a protein bar he loses a horn getting out," she said. "I'm not betting food anymore. I haven't eaten sitting down in 4 days." "You think this is still worth it?" she asked, not looking away from the screen. He sighed. "Define worth it." "I mean, we've got interspecies sprains, broken bones, a panic attack caused by a starting pistol, and someone tried to ice their injury with liquid nitrogen." That was the Drenari runner. He thought it was a performance enhancer. "I'm just saying," Alessa said, turning off the screen, "we might have needed a longer orientation period. I tried to tell the committee. They wanted authenticity. You know what would be authentic?" "A universal first aid course." He nodded, then glanced at the far end of the tent, where a group of Corlath were huddled around a cot, whispering in ultrasonic pulses. A few weeks ago, they'd been hailed as biomechanical marvels, sleek, efficient, genetically optimized for endurance. Now, one of them had torn something in her core rotation assembly doing the human-style pole climb, and her teammates were clearly rattled. Xander approached, slowing as the pulses stopped. The injured Corlath's limbs twitched slightly as she tried to sit up. "Please remain horizontal," he said. "Your muscle matrix hasn't stabilized. I am already behind schedule," she replied, her voice flat but not unfriendly. "I was informed recovery would be rapid. For humans, no. For you, maybe. But your internal systems reacted badly to our atmospheric pressure after exertion." Her head tilted slightly. "We were told Earth's gravity was manageable. It is. But we also have humidity, pollen, and whatever's in the air from that deep-fried vendor station." "I consumed one of those," she said. "It has not left." Xander rubbed his forehead. "You're not the first. I'm going to recommend we ban food trucks next time." A low whistle echoed from outside. The climbing relay must have ended. A moment later, a comm unit on the wall blinked, and a voice announced that the final day of preliminaries would begin in 30 minutes. The med tent stirred. Xander turned back to the Corlath. "You're cleared to stay here for now, but you're not competing again until the field medic signs off. I do not wish to forfeit. Then recover. That's an order." She blinked once, slowly. As he walked back toward Alessa's cot, a small, translucent container rolled across the floor and bumped into his shoe. He picked it up. Inside was a pale blue gel that shimmered with faint movement. A handwritten label read, "Emergency regenerative salve use with translator present." He held it up. "Who dropped their miracle goo?" A high-pitched chitter came from under a nearby cot. A tiny Frillian scurried out, only 2 feet tall, with 4 legs and an oversized backpack that seemed to contain half a pharmacy. "That's not supposed to be outside the stasis pouch," the Frillian said, snatching it back. Xander raised an eyebrow. "What does it do?" "Accelerates dermal repair, but only if the subject's DNA doesn't include calcium-based infrastructure. Otherwise, you get uncontrolled bone growth." "Good to know." The Frillian started to scuttle off, then hesitated. "Also, I think the Xari athlete in Cot 7 is growing a second kneecap." "What?" Side effect. "He tried to use it on a bruise." Xander spun on his heel, marching toward Cot 7. The Xari was sitting peacefully, reading a book upside down. His leg was indeed bulging in a way that suggested nature had been given some very confusing instructions. "You didn't ask, before applying unknown salve to your body?" Xander asked. The Xari looked up. It tingled. "I'm going to need you to stop making medical decisions based on sensation." A nurse arrived with a scanner. The image showed a calcified lump forming just below the kneecap. She muttered something under her breath, then looked at Xander. "We can dissolve it if we catch it early." "Do it," he said, And find me every single unauthorized substance in this tent. Back at the entrance, a small crowd had gathered. A few human volunteers were directing athletes out toward the final events. One of them turned to Xander. Shot put finals are starting soon. We've got 3 species competing who have never handled spherical objects before. Please tell me someone gave them a crash course. They watched a 10-minute video with subtitles. Xander groaned. By midday, the stadium was filled to capacity, even the floating bleachers occupied. The heat had mellowed slightly, but the tension hadn't. Shot put was underway, and the first Miraki throw had embedded itself in the soft turf 4 meters off center. The second throw, by a human, landed cleanly. The third, by the Velkoran, defied physics. Xander stood with the judges, watching slow-motion replay on the screen. The Velkoran had spun 3 full rotations, released at a 90-degree angle, and the shot had traveled in a high arc before bouncing off the field sensors and landing just outside the boundary. "That's a foul," the judge said. The Velkoran ambassador, standing nearby, hissed. That trajectory was an artistic expression of kinetic devotion. It landed out of bounds. "You do not appreciate the metaphor. We appreciate safety." That nearly hit the drone camera crew. The ambassador's head fins vibrated. "You should not place fragile devices in the airspace of passion." Xander held up his clipboard. "This is why we're rewriting every rulebook after this." As the finals wrapped up and the crowd began to file out through glowing exit corridors, Xander sat down on the edge of the field. His feet ached, his shirt was permanently stained, and his tablet battery had died somewhere between the 3rd and 4th injury report of the day. Alessa joined him, her crutches digging awkwardly into the synthetic turf. "I heard the Velkoran called you a structural buzzkill," she said. "I've been called worse, by someone with 3 mouths." She handed him a sealed bottle of water. "You did good, you know. They'll learn from this." "They'll have to. We can't host again with this many casualties." She glanced around at the now empty stadium. "Still. We made history." "Yeah," he said, "and a lot of medical records." They sat in silence for a moment, the last rays of sun catching on the stadium's metallic edges. Somewhere in the distance, a cheer echoed from the closing ceremony. Xander stood up, stretching his back. "No more injuries," he said, famous last words. "Let's just get through the ceremony without anyone dislocating a tentacle." As they walked toward the exit, a small automated cart whizzed by, carrying a tray of medals. It swerved violently to avoid a wandering Telnari and crashed into a pylon. Xander didn't flinch. He just kept walking.